You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Kinezic.
Welcome to the listener feedback version of The Buzz, brought to you by the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. I am Fran Chismar,
And I'm Tom Kinezic, and this is going to be the first ever hour-long Fran's Complaint. So this is going to be a good one for all you listeners at home.
This isn't even my complaint.
No, just kidding. But Fran tends to mention he doesn't like to read the reviews, or he actually promises that he's not going to read the reviews, but he always reads them anyway. So
yeah.
So Fran, why don't you get into what happened this time?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to complain about myself for how many times I said in the last podcast. I just did it.
Yeah, there you go.
I realized
it's the drinking game.
It is. Well, I was going to suggest that at first in the Facebook group, and I was like, no, I should make it like a planting game, because everyone would have been dead drunk had it been a drinking game. But I know, like, I have a tendency to latch on to certain words or phrases and say it. And I don't know if I've been doing this the whole time, but this was the first podcast that I realized in one sentence, I think I said, like 5 times. And then Emil started saying it after. It was almost like it was contagious.
Yeah.
Like I provoked him. So, but anyway, with the reviews, I know I had said that I wasn't going to read reviews. I really wasn't going to read bad reviews because I didn't want it to get in my head. So this was like a 4-star review.
And we get so many fabulous reviews, awesome reviews that really keep us motivated and make us want to do more and more.
And I'm not about or above criticism. I'm fully prepared for constructive criticism. Even, if someone just doesn't like us, that's cool too. Yeah. So, but it was just weird for me that it was like a 4-star review, kind of like it was like a bad review disguised as a 4-star review.
And I remember you came in the office and said, "Hey, we got a review," and it just didn't hit me the right way. So I went and read it. I always forget about the reviews, and I kind of forget about the podcast until we start talking again in here. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, we recorded that with so and so last week. And, oh yeah, we did. But you told me about the review, so I went and read it. I'm like, it just kind of, it wasn't bad. It just made me go, I wasn't expecting that. And I think it really was just a misunderstanding of expectations on a listener standpoint in this case.
And I have no problem with a listener feeling that way. It's I don't want to change anyone's perception. If that's how you feel about it, that's fine. But I was just a little perplexed because I wasn't even going to address it. I was just going to look at it and go, okay. But then I couldn't stop thinking about it. And then I was like, maybe we should talk about it.
And I felt the same way. Because I was like, we shouldn't talk about this at all. But I figured, you know what? This is something a listener requested. Maybe we should talk about it and really just kind of straighten the narrative a little bit. And I'm not going to read the review, but you can find it. If you go to Apple Podcasts, you can find it. And I think it's the only 4-star review we have. So
it's going to be the most recent review. So,
but they basically, their gripe was that we were focusing too much on like companies and restoration. I wouldn't even say it was a gripe.
No, they were giving us criticism. They were hoping we could follow this to make it more enjoyable for them.
They want to know more about like what they can do as an individual in their yard in New Jersey, specifically New Jersey. And we're saying how there's so few native plant nurseries in New Jersey as compared to other places on the East Coast. And the other thing, which I actually kind of agree with this one to a point, was they said we had a lot of filler in the episodes, which was kind of an we've cut down on that, at least on the, not on the Buzz episodes, but on the regular episodes, because we have so much, the guests want to talk for so long. Like it's such a good conversation. And really the filler was just I don't even call it filler. It was more of an attempt for you to get to know us a little better, some of our different hobbies and other things about us that
we want it to be more relatable.
Exactly.
Not just a person that you hear interviewing someone. We wanted the listener to get to know us a little bit, and we figured that would make it more enjoyable. We we really took that out once we started the buzz.
Yeah.
And we were
Yeah.
able to focus more on the guests for Meet the Guest, and the buzz is, because the
it
buzz
gave us a
isn't going to be
place
for everyone.
Yeah, it gave us a place to kind of dive into some of those conversations and some of the other thoughts that we had from those conversations. Even in the last episode with Emil DeVito, he started talking about deer being overpopulated in the state and how there needs to be some incentive to take more of them, and he proposed a commercial venison industry in New Jersey, which I know with other more invasive animals, they actually fight against that. And I don't want to bring this up in the episode with him. He's talking about so many great things.
Yeah.
And I figured at some point we'll address it where, with wild hogs in the Southwest, they don't want they actually, when they capture them and kill them, they just dispose of them. They don't donate the meat. They don't allow people to eat it.
Yeah.
And when I first heard, I'm like, that's kind of strange, but realistically, they don't want to assign any value to it. Once they're donating it to homeless shelters, once it becomes something you can get at a restaurant, well, now they don't want that supply of pigs to run out. They don't want the wild hogs to run out. So I kind of feel the same with the deer in a way, where, if we all of a sudden start taking those deer and giving the homeless shelters, which they do already, but making it so there's a commercial industry revolving around it, we don't want less deer. We want more deer. There's a value assigned to it now. So, but I don't want to bring that up with Emil because there's so many other things we're talking about.
Yeah.
So.
But it's one thing that I wouldn't feel, for a living, we deal with restorations, and even though I'm a gardener, I'm a novice gardener.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I like. I'm not necessarily the best person to give advice for what you could do in your yard, but considering we have listeners, like our number in listens, the 5th most state is California. I can't.
Oh yeah.
I can't tell you what to plant in your yard that's going to be appropriate for everyone that listens.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually like a top podcast in Australia.
Yeah. And we have listeners from Washington, from Tennessee, from Kentucky,
Michigan,
Massachusetts, all over the place.
Minnesota. It's hard, but we're trying to connect you with organizations that can give you that information.
Yeah, that was our goal, was to connect native plant enthusiasts and newbies with organizations that really could find their spark in something where, and that's one of and also expose you to different organizations that are working towards the same things, just for a different goal. Using those same methods for a different goal. That's why we brought on like the Xerxes Society and Duke Farms, National Wild Turkey Federation, Ducks Unlimited, because they're all doing a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah.
But it's for completely different goals, and they're doing it in different places in the country. And I know you go onto the Xerxes Society website, you can find lists of what to plant in a dry site in the Northwest or a wet site in the Southeast. They give you guides to do all this stuff.
Yeah, like
which I don't know that stuff. Jersey Friendly Yards is another great example.
I know Wild Ones. I think you can. It does free garden design on the website for native gardens. I think on the Wild Ones website. So we tried to, and that's with the buzz expanding to here's websites that can help you. Here's books that can help you. Here's all the resources to help guide you make those right choices for your yard. Because what I like isn't necessarly the right thing or what you're going to like. Yep. I guarantee it's not.
Yeah. So we like we were just saying, we've created an all filler episode in the month. So if you want to hear Fran talk for hours and hours on end, that's your place.
Or if you don't, you can skip the buzz.
And there's people who there's people who don't like the buzz. My dad being one of them. He gets to hear us talk all the time. He doesn't want to hear us.
Yeah.
But he loves hearing. A lot of them are his friends. Some of our guests are old friends of his. Like Emil DeVito's an old friend.
Yeah.
Russ Fenari is another old friend, and he likes hearing these experts talk really in depth about the topics they are so passionate and so knowledgeable about. Where my wife, who's really just scratching the surface of native plants, she really likes the buzz episodes, and she kind of skips some of the regular interview episodes because they're a little bit too deep for her. She is just scratching the surface of this stuff.
Yeah, my fiance loves the buzz more. That's more her depth in the industry. And then rooted discussions for someone that wants it even a step further gives us a chance to really dive deep into a subject, which we don't really get to do on the buzz. And we don't really get to do on, when we have one organization on where we're dealing with that organization, not like the full topic at hand sometimes. Yeah. So this allows us to really get, down and dirty with a whole topic for a long time. Yeah. With different viewpoints, not just one viewpoint. So
exactly.
But what even though I promised I wasn't going to read reviews, and I still look almost every day to see if there's a review, I'm kind of glad I did, because I'm happy. You know, some of our listeners have actually messaged and said, "Hey, I have some criticism. I didn't want to put it, make it public because I didn't want to put it in a bad light. But here are my thoughts." And you know what? They were great criticisms, and I appreciate any feedback, positive or negative. But you can't, for as much as we want to make everyone happy, we're not going to make everyone happy. I think with the current system, we can. But the nice thing about this one, I'm glad we read the review, because it inspired us for this episode. We didn't really have a topic for this episode. It kind of inspired us for we just had a 3 days of snow here in New Jersey, and it kind of made us think, hey, what can you do right now? Now's a slow time. And we kind of, when we discussed, I just said, now it's going to drive me crazy. But in Rooted Discussions, we discussed that sometimes winter is the best time to get things done.
Oh yeah.
You're busy, but it's a different kind of busy. So we thought, what are some winter gardening tips? Not just for New Jersey, just anywhere that experiences, it doesn't even have to be if you get snow. We thought we would give some tips that would help you in your winter garden.
Yeah. I guess unless you don't have winter, then if you're in Southern Florida, we're not helping. We're not helping you much with this episode.
No, but that's true. We're helping, I think, a good portion.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, and even though, one thing before I forget too, I wanted to say it earlier and I kind of got sidetracked. Even though we're in New Jersey and we bring on a lot of New Jersey organizations, that's because that's who we deal with and we're familiar with. We hope to expand that. We've had some international and national organizations, and we hope to expand that out to make it more relevant to everyone. So even people in the Northeast can see what they're doing in other parts of the country.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but right now we're focusing on wintering tips. I was kind of looking out the window yesterday thinking, well, what can you do right now? And I think we came up with a pretty good list.
Yeah.
Some basics.
Yeah, definitely.
You want to go? You want to give the first one, or you want me to give the first
I'm going to let you give the first one.
So, and this has been a topic for us for the last, a few times in the last couple episodes. Now is a good time to remove invasives. Sometimes when plants are in leaf, like I would have honeysuckle coming in to bushes, and you can't get in. That they're so dense that you can't really see with all the leaves what's going on. Now with everything defoliated, like I have a lot of greenbrier coming up in some of my hedges. And it's really easy to get in there and identify. You can see those thorns now, and you can tell the branching structure. You can see the difference in the color of the stems, and it's easier to get in and dig that out and really get rid of it. So now's a good time for spotting invasives when they're dormant, where you can really, if you go in and you're able to cut them back or dig them out, now's the time.
Oh yeah,
I think it's a great opportunity when you can really focus on it. When it's spring and summer, there's so many other things you can be doing in your garden now. That's a good thing that you could do now.
Yeah, and even scaling that up a little bit in the next couple months. Again, here in the Northeast, we're going to be seeing one of the first things that blooms is the Bradford pear. Yeah, and that's just a great way to identify that plant, because it's one of the only things that's blooming at that time of year, and a great time to identify it, a great time to get rid of it if you're able to.
Completely.
Yeah. One of the other things that you definitely can be doing right now is planning ahead. Just thinking about trying to remember, if you're really on top of things, you were keeping notes on what you wanted to do in your garden last year. We said, oh, you know what? There's a little hole in the garden right here where a plant I put in didn't fill out quite enough, or I always wanted this plant. Well, now's the time to kind of go back over those notes, or go back over what you recall from the last year and start to plan and think about, well, what plants am I going to get? Where am I going to put them? Where do I have a need? What's done? And kind of get it all in writing now, or at least get it in your brain space, so that you're not unprepared going into the year. You have or what was it? One of our listeners and friends, Roz Dormis, even mentioned in our Facebook group that she is already placing her spring orders. And if you let your nursery and garden centers know what you're looking for, they can include those plants in their production to increase their orders from their other vendors.
John, they kind of treat their retail like wholesale, and they allow people to pre-order so that it's ready. That's a great time to do it now. you have the time, the availability is still pretty good, or if we haven't started production yet, we can increase production if we know there's demand for something. So now's a really good time to do that. Another thing that we thought of, we talked about how important leaves were. We had a couple listener questions about leaves. So did you save your leaves, or you're composting them? Now's time to kind of spot check to see if there's holes in the garden that need to be touched up or fixed up. Now is the time to make sure you're taking care of that. So if you saved your leaves and you have some areas that could use a little bit more to help for these colder temperatures, we're going down in the teens, I think, every night next week.
Yeah.
So now's the time to really make sure that you took good care of your beds, your gardening beds.
Take notice, especially in the snow. It's really easy to see. But how many birds do you have? Are there a lot of birds visiting your garden? If not, maybe it's time to think about what are some shrubs or plants that you can put in to provide some forage for them over the winter. They don't necessarily need bird feeders and bird seed if you have the right plants there to hold them over.
I was going to say, bird feeders aside, if you have bird feeders right now, especially in the snow, you have birds. But if you didn't have bird feeders, is there enough food? Is there enough burying things? Is there enough cover for them? Do you have birds active in your garden? So now's the time you would know, especially with the snow. So just take an inventory of that, and if not, start thinking about what you can add to that garden to make sure you have the birds taken care of. One thing that I'm not always great with are your pruners sharp? Are you ready when spring comes? Now's the time you can really do maintenance on all your tools. Make sure you're sharpened.
Do you have the right tools?
Yeah.
Maybe you need new stuff because those clippers were a little bit sticky last year, and you've had them for 20 years. Maybe you need a new pair.
Yes.
And you didn't get them for Christmas, so you're gonna have to go and get them yourself.
Yeah, and sometimes off season you get better prices on some of these things. You can get last year's model, something like that. So
and if you're it's on something on your honey-do list and you're not necessarily the one, now's the time to put off buying those tools at the same time, because then you can kind of save that weekend and say, oh, I don't have the right thing to do it, so I can wait till next weekend if you really want. I've done that a lot.
Me too.
So another thing you can start now, and something we're starting in the nursery, if you're growing from seed, now is a good time to start, at the very least, stratifying your seed, if not even seeding into trays. It's just that time of year where the day length is starting to get a little longer. The light is starting to get a little bit more intense. If you have a heated space, or even if you have grow lights and can make a heated space, now's a good time to start those seeds so you have a bigger, more mature plant going into your planting season.
Some of these seeds need winter stratification. You have to really plan for that. And sometimes there are some seeds that need 2 cold periods and 2 warm periods. So just kind of know that. Do a little bit of research on the seed. The seed that you get isn't always stratified appropriately. So just make sure you kind of know what the seed needs for stratification. You're not going to find everything, but you can find a good number of things. And that's what some of these groups are for. If you're a member of our Facebook group, throw it out there and say, I have this seed. Can anyone tell me about the stratification? I'm sure the combined knowledge of that group, someone has had experience with it. One of the things that you can also do is assess damage plants from winter storm. There may be some pruning you need to take care of, or you may want to collect some of this wood and keep it for later in the year to put out to help with wildlife or other insects. It doesn't hurt to have dead wood in the garden for habitat. So keep some of that, like identify what would be good, what things may need to be fixed or planted or moved, because of damage. So that's, something may be getting damaged every year, and you may say, this isn't the best place for this. I may want to move it. So now's a good time to do that.
And the last one is, if you're really good at this, is start designing your own garden for the upcoming year. You might have a new project. You might have a tree that you want to start planting around, or you have a bed in your yard that you want to redo. Well, now's a great time to do that plan. Again, we kind of even mentioned on it earlier, is you're going through that thought process, you're planning it out, you're figuring out what you're going to need to order, what you need to get. And well, why not do it right now? Especially during a snowstorm like we had yesterday. You're sitting inside already. Well, get yourself a cup of coffee and a piece of scratch paper and just kind of plot out what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's great advice. Who knew? Who knew we could come up with that many great things?
Oh, yeah.
So there's plenty to do. There's always plenty to do. And it's obvious in the spring and summer and the fall when you're doing it. But the winter's not as there's always some things that you could do to fine tune. And now's a great time.
And that's, Fran, I got to be honest. I actually took some of these from my wife, because so with our other side business, Pinelands Direct, we started an email newsletter, and for the first of every month, she puts out a checklist of what you need to do that month.
Oh, that's great.
And I was like, oh, this is perfect. It's already planned out. It's a nice little graphic. I'll actually post it in the Facebook group, just because I find it really helpful. And I found other email lists I've been on where they kind of do that, and they give you a month by month checklist. Okay, this is what you need to do this month. This is what I need to do next month. And it keeps you on schedule, it keeps you on task. And yeah, maybe you get a little bit behind, but you're not in June saying, oh, I wish I did this back in February, because now I have to wait till next February to actually do it. So
no, that's all great.
So keep your eyes out. I'm going to post those in the group once we're done with this episode.
I think that's wonderful. So are you ready for our next segment?
I am.
All right, let's do it.
It's hot.
Would you like to go first, or would you like me to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first, because it actually touches on the last thing. And just for everyone who's a new listener, because we have quite a few of those now.
Yes.
That's Hot's a section where we kind of talk about some of the things, or I shouldn't say things, but the plants that have really sparked our interest just walking around the nursery or driving around, or things that we're seeing that have a little extra importance this week.
Yes.
So mine this week, we kind of touched on, was actually is Echinacea purpurea, which a lot of you are thinking, well, that's something that blooms in June, July, August. Why are you talking about that now? Well, it provides really good seed forage for birds.
Yes.
And over with the storm, a lot of the people in our area and some of these native plant groups, I was seeing all kinds of videos of people putting up, and it wasn't just Echinacea purpurea, but they were showing videos of the birds just going crazy on these seed heads from things like Echinacea purpurea, and even Agastache funiculum, or Agastache funiculum. Monarda officiosa is another one. And the birds are they really rely on that when there's snow. And not that they're not visiting these seed heads at other time, but they were really hammering those seed heads hard. And there's actually one Echinacea plant that I have in our front garden that I forgot to trim back. I don't know how. It's kind of in the middle of everything, and I just missed it. And of course, I went out there, I looked in the snow, there's seed all over or seed husks all over the ground around it, and little bird footprints and all that. So I know they were happy for the one plant I left. I mean, next year I'm going to plan to leave more up, if not all of them up.
And that's a great tip right there. A lot of people want to get ahead of the game and do a lot of fall cleanup, but you really want to let some of these seed heads go and go to seed and create more plants, or create winter habitat or winter food for a lot of birds and other animals that use them. So it's always good. Some things die back. I know we mentioned it in another episode, like roses. If you prune them in the fall, they die back from the tip. So you're actually, if you cut them back too far in the fall, you're damaging the plant. It's recommended that you do it in March. So some of these things is a much better March cleanup. It may not give you the look that you want over the winter, but you're really helping habitat.
Yeah. And just to finish that up, it's a dry site plant, and not necessarily native to New Jersey. Is considered adventive in New Jersey, but as some of the experts we've talked to, it's a great gateway plant because it's so available from just regular garden centers. It's native to the United States. It's something that people recognize. The everyday someone who gardens is going to know that plant and recognize it, and then be like, oh, it's native too. Some of this other native stuff must be good as well. So it's a gateway plant in my opinion.
Mine is a little bit of a stretch. So for anyone that's watching this on YouTube, I just switched my background to show my plant. So it's Emil DeVito was talking about his favorite shrub was spice bush, and it made me go out into the houses and look. And now's the time of the year that the buds are starting to swell, and it starts to make you think of spring, because you're getting a swelling bud, and it gets like a globose, like a rounded bud, and it does swell early. It's one of the first things to bloom. It will bloom. It's like a pale yellow flower before the leaves come out, so it really stands out. A lot of times it's a moist woods. It's a facultative wet species. But it does have yellow fall color. It has scarlet fruit. Songbird and game birds love the fruit. It gets 6 to 12 foot. You can keep it towards that 6 foot
Mhm.
if you'd like. It's you can prune it very well if you'd like it pruned. Plus, the foliage and fruit are fragrant, hence the name spice bush. So, plus, I know some of our listeners have been sharing in the Facebook group about making tea with native plants, spice bush.
Oh yeah.
The leaves, and from what I understand, the fruit both make a really good tea. So if you're interested in a spice bush tea, that may be one that you can use.
Yeah, very cool.
So, all right, I'm gonna switch my
and that wasn't as far of a stretch as me using Andropogon virginicus that Daryl did, which I almost want to use again because he sent us both a great picture over the weekend of Andropogon virginicus in the snow with his kids playing and all that. It was actually a really cool picture.
Yes, it was a great picture, and it was great to see the plants. The plants really popped as well. So it was great to see that. So, all right. So I guess we're on to our next segment. You can get with this, or you can get with that. So we do have to go into the winner.
Yeah.
So the winner of this round of this or that, Tom, crushed me 13-3. And it was really 13-2, and I had one vote on YouTube. And I don't even know if we're counting that.
Oh no, that's good. No, we always say you gotta vote in the group.
They said the person said they didn't have
a Facebook.
So it didn't help me anyway. Yeah. So, but we are now tied overall 3-3. So it's been pretty steady.
Yeah.
Here's the one thing I have learned. I have no idea what our audience wants.
No. Oh yeah, definitely not.
Because I've picked articles which I felt were pandering that didn't go over well. I picked articles that were self-indulgent that went over very well. I really have no idea what is going to win on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
I really have no idea. I don't know if you have a formula yet.
No, not at all. At first, when I won the first two, the third one, I really went out for a stretch just to say, oh, maybe they just like me better. And they didn't, because I think you crushed me that week. But it was nice to be back on the winning side again. It's been a few hard weeks for me of losing. So
no, but
nice to be back.
I love that we make it a competition though.
Yeah.
It keeps it interesting every week. I try extra hard with the articles to make sure, because
there can be only one.
So you get to choose. Would you like to go first, or would you like to go second?
I'm gonna go first.
Okay.
So, and again, this is this or that, where we're going to present our favorite news stories in the native plant space, and you get to vote on who did a better job of presenting their article, because like Fran just said, everything's got to be a competition.
It has to be. It has to be. There can only be one winner.
Yeah. This week, I picked a story. Now I got to remember the name of the paper. It was Lancaster Online. Okay. And it was actually based on a presentation at the Pennsylvania Farm Show that just took place a couple weeks ago. And it was titled, I just got off the page. It was titled, "Does Your Backyard Stream Need Rehab? Here's what to look out for from snails to invasive plants."
Oh, okay.
And so this is actually something that probably helps a lot of people who are listening if you have some kind of waterway, specifically a stream, but even if you had a creek. Are those the same thing? Or a creek? Depends on where you live. It could be a creek. If you have a river front, if you have anything like that, this is a really good indicator. But a stream in particular, you have the chance to make the biggest impact on. And the article basically said that streams are a mixed blessing. They're really nice, good to have that water flowing through your property. Gives you some opportunities to do some really cool stuff. If you have kids, it's great for them to go in and play in. But at the same time, it can cause some erosion problems. It can cause some flooding problems. So it's not, like I said, it's kind of a mixed blessing.
Yes.
It's not necessarily always a good thing. And sometimes if you don't pay attention to it,
yes,
it can become a very bad thing.
Yes.
So one of the things they point out is that in healthy ecosystems, rainfall and precipitation infiltration, actually 50% of that water is going to infiltrate into the ground. 40% of that water is going to evaporate, and 10% will actually be runoff. To put this in perspective, go to your local Walmart and see where the water goes, and it's basically all running off because the water can't get into the pavement, or very, very little is absorbed by the pavement, and then it evaporates on. If you have a healthy system where you have multiple leaf layers, a canopy, and this could still be a grassland, but you have multiple layers down where the water is hitting a lot of vegetation on the way down. It's slowing that water from hitting the ground. The ground has a capacity of how much water it can take per hour. If the soil is compacted, it's going to take less water than if it's looser and has more pore space. It'll take more water. So healthy soil with a lot of plant life, you're going to get 50% of that rainfall or precipitation is going to be absorbed deep into the ground and replenish your groundwater eventually. That doesn't happen more often than not. Like the roof on your house, it's rolling off into the lawn, adding to the capacity there. Your lawn isn't really doing much. If you have some trees, that help slow water down. If you have a meadow, that really helps slow water down and really just filters that water so it doesn't pick up as much sediment.
Yeah.
And that's the big problem, is you get the sediment and contaminants, whether it be dog poop is one, oil from washing your car, soaps, those kind of things, fertilizers, pesticides. Those can pollute that water that then goes into your stream. And fertilizers. Well, I don't remember if I mentioned that one. So Pennsylvania has come up with a program which is called the First Evaluation of Stream Health. Acronym is FISH, which is pretty good for,
yeah,
for stream.
Yeah, I like that.
And it's a survey that studies the water quality, the embeddedness of rocks. So if you have rocks on the bottom, is there a lot of sand and silt that's kind of covering those rocks, or the rocks up next against each other?
Gotcha.
That's an indicator. It studies the macroinvertebrates in the stream. There's a lot of different factors that they look at to kind of say, is this stream healthy or does it need help? Or does it need to go to rehab? And what they said, if you do need to take your stream to rehab, one of the first ways you can do it is just let it rewild naturally. Just stop mowing, like 10 feet on either side of the stream. If you have the room, just stop mowing there. And the vegetation that's there is going to start to grow up. Yes. If you have the right stuff, it's going to be really good, but you potentially have invasives. You potentially have things that you don't want there. Japanese knotweed was one they mentioned in the article.
And that's a hard thing for a lot of people, because when they have water, they want view of it.
Exactly,
they don't want it to not be visible. So that's always a hard thing. But that, again, that could cut out the amount of shade. You know, is the stream wide and fast moving, or is it really deep? And there's a lot of factors in it. So that's a great way to look at that.
But just having that vegetation base in place right around the edge of the stream is going to slow all that runoff coming in the stream, help drop a lot of that sediment, so you're getting clean water going into the stream. And they've shown studies of this where they said just having like a 10-foot buffer around a farm field going by a ditch or a stream cleaned your water 90%.
Wow.
Just, I think it was like a 10-foot buffer. Now, if you were to have an even wider buffer, that percentage is only going up. The narrower your buffer, it's only going down, and it goes down fast. So that was a big part of it. But like I said, you open yourself up to invasives if you just let it regrow. What they really recommended, and this was still on smaller scales, is to just start planting native plants around it. Plant a lot of wildflowers, plant a lot of live stakes is a really cheap and affordable option. If you don't have things like black willow, if they're native to your area, you don't have those things around you to collect your own live stakes. They're pretty easy. I shouldn't say easy to get, but you can find them from some places, from some nurseries. And then the last thing is said that you do need permits over a certain section, like footage of stream front. And I forget what that was, but you did need permits. And they said, before you start anything, just consult your local soil conservation district, because they'll be able to guide you if you need permits or not, if something you can do at home. But they really advocated for just letting or planting natives around your stream fronts, because of the impact on water quality. Even if it's only 100 foot of stream, you're not having that impact on the water. That's just going to keep going downstream.
That's a great article.
It was
Tom.
pretty cool.
That was a great article. I feel as though, well, my article is going to be a little controversial because it's been brought up in the Facebook group before, but I don't know if it's considered cheating a little bit, because one of our listeners sent me this article. I had a little help.
My mom gave me an article to
okay.
All
right.
about,
So
but I didn't use it. But she did give me an article.
I'm using it because this topic came up in our Facebook group, and I thought it was clear how we felt about this topic, but maybe it's not. So the name of this article is "The Problem with Honeybees. They're important for agriculture, but they're not so good for the environment." And that was published in Scientific American by Allison McPhee, PhD. And she's a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Entomology and Plant Pathology at North Carolina State University. So one of the first sentences in the article that really got me was that beekeeping is for people. It's not a conservation practice. And it's true. And honeybees are an exotic insect. They were brought to North America. They weren't native here. So they're something that came here, and they're still gathering the data. I know you've read articles before, not surveys, but studies on honeybees and if it's detrimental. And that's the bee that everyone knows. That's the bee that's beloved, that everyone thinks of honey, but it's not really native to here. And what are they doing to our native population? So they were saying that honeybees are destabilizing natural ecosystems by competing with native bees. And the honeybee industry actually benefits from the decline of native bees. Honey is a big industry in our country. Yeah. So they want the success of this. But the studies are starting to show that even fruit sets from plants nearest to hives have mainly aborted seeds, which is hurting biodiversity. So they do know that they outcompete. And it's not that our bees are bad at pollinating. They're just being greatly outcompeted by honeybees, and it's making it even harder, and those populations are declining. So it was a really good study, and they use studies from all over the globe, nationally and internationally, to back up these thoughts. So, to me, beekeeping isn't really, and that's, Benjamin Vogt talks about you shouldn't garden for yourself. You're part of the garden. You're not, they're not looking pieces for you. So beekeeping's kind of the same thing. You're doing it for yourself. You're not really doing it for everything else. So I'm not a big proponent of honeybees.
Yeah, I'm not either. And I kind of got on that train probably it was around like 2014 or 2015. Yeah. Because I was presented some research that was actually out of Norway. And it was talking about, now European honeybees are native to Europe, but they aren't native in Norway. And they were finding there that they were outcompeting a lot of their native bees. I was like, well, if that's true there, it's got to be true here.
Yeah.
And then you start seeing research come out of the Carvo Bee Lab in University of Minnesota. And now it's becoming more and more researched from all over the place. But they were finding that the honeybees outcompete the native bees, and they're far less efficient at pollinating the natives than native bees are. Yeah. Honeybees are way less efficient pollinators than the native bees.
Yeah.
But there was more of them. They're working in a hive operation versus a lot of the native bees are solitary bees. There's only one that has a nest and lays eggs.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's something I've been on as an agriculturalist. I do see their importance. You have these huge almond groves in California. Well, native bees aren't going to populate that. They don't have enough habitat for native bees because in between each grove is just bare soil, or maybe it's grass.
Yeah.
So you don't have the native bees there. But we've talked to blueberry farmers and cranberry farmers who, the one blueberry farmer in particular, he said, I used to spend all this money on beehives, and I found just by observing all these native pollinators on the plants around, like the clethra and all that, around the blueberry farm, that, I have a lot of these native bees. I think they actually do a better job of pollinating the blueberries than the bees do. And so he just stopped bringing in the bees, and he had better blueberry crops because he had more efficient pollination.
Yeah.
So,
and one of the
very interesting.
One of the interesting things in the article that it makes sense, but I never thought of, that honeybees are very efficient at pollinating invasive plants.
Yeah.
They're exotic insects. They're familiar with these exotic plants. So things like, one of the things they're great at pollinating is Japanese knotweed.
Yeah.
And we just talked about that in the last episode with Emil DeVito of NJCF about that's the one thing we need to get under control in our forests. And that would open up so much more room for conservation or restoration if we could take care of that plant. So honeybees are actually helping that plant thrive, which I thought, I'm like, that makes sense. I don't know why I never connected those two things, but that makes complete sense to me.
Yeah. It's amazing how I said it in the last or 2 buzzes ago, how little we actually know, and that whole fallacy of knowledge and what we think we're doing is good. And like, I really badly wanted to talk about the cocaine hippos in Colombia but I don't think the research is there yet. And you guys all probably have cocaine hippo fatigue by now because it's a little bit older of a story.
Yeah.
But they were finding down in Colombia how there used to be these megafauna that are now extinct, and that would browse and help clean up rivers and do all that. And they're finding that the hippos are actually performing a lot of these ecosystem services that have been missing since a lot of these other animals went extinct.
Yeah.
And in addition, they were reducing fish poachers.
Wow.
Because they didn't want to go down the river with the hippos in there. Look, that's a pretty cool story that kind of ties into what we're talking about.
Exactly.
But we don't know because it's a non-native species to there. We don't know what the actual ramifications will be.
No. So I think that's 2 great stories.
Oh, yeah.
We have does your backyard stream need rehab? And we have the problem with honeybees. We'll post this up in the Facebook group where you can vote for either article. And I think what do you think? Who do you think is going to win this week?
I don't know. Mine is more down home, something you can do to help.
Yeah.
Yours is more, I don't want to say philosophical, but scientific.
Yeah. And not
That's for
everyone's
sure.
going to agree with mine.
Yeah.
Not, you know.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of people who, and I've tried to mention before, I'm not necessarily an anti-honeybee person. I think they're fascinating. I'm probably still pretty similar in beliefs to what Sam Droege said. I think they're fascinating. I think they have a lot of value. It's just not to native plants.
Yes.
It's they are a form of cattle. They're good for agriculture, but keep them out of the meadows.
Yeah. All right. So there you go.
And of course, the choice is yours.
So you suggested on the last buzz a new segment, and you kind of hinted to it at the beginning of this episode of the Bud. It's Fran's complaint. I don't know what the official title is.
Oh, well, we can leave it at that.
But I do have a complaint, and I did come up with a jingle. I did name the segment. Yeah. So you ready for the unleashing?
Yes. Yeah, I'm ready.
So it's called Not That I'm One to Complain. So, and my complaint isn't really native plant ecosystem ecology oriented. Just in our next segment coming up are questions, and the person that called in left such they had wonderful phone etiquette. And the reason why I'm pointing that out is because I've realized phone etiquette has really just gone out the window since the invention of text messaging, I think. And maybe I'm sounding like an old codger.
I was going to say, I think this is when, as a millennial, I'm supposed to say, okay, boomer.
Yeah. You know, I just kind of feel like the art of conversation has been lost, not completely, but the phone etiquette, I'm not just talking about business wise, socially, you deal with, you know, you get phone calls, people don't say who they are, what they want. They don't even know how to conduct a phone conversation, which is weird. Like growing up, I remember standing next to the phone and having my father yell at me for saying something incorrect on the phone. Like, tell them who they tell them who you are. What do they want? You know, like to me, it was just things that like we were yelled at if we didn't have proper phone etiquette. Now you're not even around the person when they're on the phone anymore. Cause it's not like our phone was in our kitchen. If you wanted to make a phone call, you can only stretch the cord so far down the hallway. You can maybe make it to the bathroom, or you can maybe make it out the front door if you wanted some privacy. But I just kind of feel that phone etiquette and the art of conversation is kind of suffering a little bit. And I'm happy that we're able to give good conversation. You and I are both very good at it. And it's something I would love to see more of. So speaking of that, and I think I maybe kept that to a minute.
Yeah.
That was,
I was even going to say, I think I learned phone etiquette because when I was a little kid, my parents had started this nursery, and the office was in our basement. So over the summer, I'd be home from school and I would answer the phone sometimes, and they're like, "Oh no, you have to say like who you are and ask who's calling, and then you direct their phone to the call to the right person." So I always grew up with that, and I always think about it when I'm leaving a message for someone. I don't want to be too detailed. I just want to leave, but I always try and make sure I say who I am, who I'm calling for. I leave my number in the beginning of the message, because one of my pet peeves is when I can't write down their number fast enough at the end of the message that I got to listen to the whole message again. So I say, oh, hey, this is Tom Knezik from Pinelands Nursery. I'm calling for so-and-so. My number's this number. I'm not going to say it on the air. Yeah. And then at the end, I repeat I say what I wanted to ask or what the message is about. And then I say, again, this is Tom Knezik from Pinelands Nursery. You can call me back on this number.
Slow enough. Now, phones today, the number pops up, but you still say it's slow enough that they can write it down if you're writing it down. Or like you said, you don't give too much information. You make it concise. Like, this is why I'm calling. I don't need give all the background, which I could do, but
basically we're saying don't leave messages like Saul.
Speaking of Saul, I'm glad you brought Saul up. There were some comments in the Facebook group about our Saul's treatment, or our treatment of Saul. We're the first ones to say we love Saul. Yeah. And this is a little back and forth between us and Saul. We tease him. Listen, if you think he doesn't really know that my name is Fran and he just keeps calling me by the wrong name, you're sadly mistaken. He knows he's getting under my skin, and each time he calls me Pam, it's a little jab. Yeah. So it's a little back and forth.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was thinking when we saw the comments on the Facebook group, and then even my dad said, "Oh yeah, why are you picking on this guy so much?" And I was like, okay, it's a little embellished.
Yeah, it is.
Maybe it's not all like it sounds to be, but we thought that was kind of clear.
A lot of it is it's like our big dysfunctional family. Like, he's a member of family, and we treat each other like family, and that's very much how I would speak to my sister. Whether that be a good thing or bad thing, but no, it's not meant. We don't mean it ill, it's not.
Definitely
we're
not.
We don't dislike Saul. We actually
I love when he calls in. I just pretend that I don't.
It's pretty much
you gotta egg him on so he does it again.
Yes. And I love, he's not as forward with it. He does it, his references are a little bit different. Like, he's the jabs are a little under the skin.
Yes.
Like, to the general public you may not get it, but I get it.
If you really don't want us to pick on Saul, you have to call in with questions, because that's when we play the Saul calls, is when we don't have enough other questions to take up our time.
But we don't have a Saul question, but we did get questions.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions, and I want to have them answered immediately.
It's a simple question.
No, I didn't hear you. What was your question?
So this question actually came in while we were recording the last buzz, and I had suggested towards the end maybe we should listen to it and call the person back. I kind of wish we did, because it's a question I could have actually answered. You never know when a lot of the time, some of the questions that come in, we don't know the answers, but we know who to ask to get the right answer. We may confer with our propagator or our production manager and get the feedback or the correct information. So we're giving you good information.
Yeah, exactly.
But this was one that we could actually answer. So before we get into it anymore, we should probably just play it.
Hi, Fran and Tom. This is Matt from Philadelphia. Big fan, first time, long time. So I have a question. I've recently been given an opportunity to steward a local park, a part of woodland lot, and it abuts a lake, and there's a significant Phragmites infestation there. So my question is, what's the best way to manage that? And given it's a restoration site, what's the likelihood that if I rip stuff out, there would be like a native seed bank? And how best to activate that native seed bank. Thank you.
I feel like that's a great question.
It really is. But my favorite part is how he said that he's a big fan and first time, long time.
That made me smile when he said first time, long time. That was like, I love that. So Phragmites, which is common reed grass for those of you that don't know what that plant is, you've all seen it. It's highly invasive, and it's, for us, a lot of the meadowlands or even the roadsides. It's really good and aggressive of filling in space, or especially where there's disturbed soil. It's a taller grass with a large plume that you can see really good at this time of the year. And a lot of people see it and go, "Oh, what's that nice plant?" Not realizing that how harmful it can be. So that's a really difficult one to remove, and we deal with a lot of restorations that are Phragmite removal that some have success and some don't. So unfortunately, it's not something that you can just rip out of the ground. It has a very thick rhizomal mat, and you have to get it all. And if you don't, it will just very easily and quickly fill back in. So you're actually excavating it all. So what a lot of these jobs do, and again, this is controversial, not everyone agrees with this. Sometimes it takes two spray, like they get sprayed twice, once to knock it down, once with herbicide, once to get what they didn't get the first time, and then they still remove the active rhizomes out of the ground. So it's not a really easy one. And then after you excavate it, you still have disturbed ground. Now, I don't want you to think that it's impossible, because it's possible. You know, and one thing I was going to point out too is, and you saw this professor speak. Someone had for Rutgers gave a talk saying, oh, we should just leave it because it holds the soil, it establishes quickly, and we're wasting money getting rid of it. What her report doesn't take into consideration is the food web, and that it
provides some ecosystem functions, and it has the base of the food web.
It hosts like 3 lepidoptera,
but
it's
what's typically in those systems, it's like very, very, there's a reason that salt marshes in particular are one of the most highest functioning ecosystems in the world, like even higher than rainforests in some accounts. It's not because of Phragmites. It's because of the Spartina and all the little narrow channelways, and it's just breeding ground for fish, all kinds of crustaceans and invertebrates. There's all kinds of stuff that thrives in that area. It's really the whole the nursery of the ocean and bay. That's where all the little stuff hangs out.
And you don't really see Phragmites in pure salt marshes because they can't take that salinity. They really thrive in that brackish area. So that brackish or fresh water is where they'll start to take over. And then you don't see the same functions. You don't get the same ecosystem function when they're present. So when you're excavating, you may lose some of that seed bank that's there, depending on how deep that seed bank is. But we did talk about a little bit in the last episode with Emil DeVito that our friends at Princeton Hydro were doing a job about 15-20 minutes from here, and it was a brackish marsh, and it was a Phragmites removal. And before they had a chance to go in and plant, the existing seed bank started to come up, and it was things like pickerel weed and duck potato and arum and all the things you would think of with a freshwater or a brackish marsh coming up. And it was great for them to see, so they knew exactly what to plant. You can't leave it open too long because you don't want those invasives to come back in.
They're going to come back in.
So, but you can plant at a spacing and help, give space for the seed bank to come into. An average spacing on center for restoration that we see most of the time is 18 inches on center. It can be 12 inches on center if you have the funds to do that. It can be 2 feet on center if you don't have as much money to do it, or if you're overseeding. Or if something's a little more aggressive, like spatterdock, you can go 3 feet apart because it fills in very quickly. So those are some of the things. It's not going to be an easy task getting rid of it. We're not saying you have to spray. If you can spray, you have to really be cognizant of what else is in that area. You have to make sure it's not windy. You have to make sure you're not harming other things. It doesn't really host a lot of things, so you're probably not killing insects if you spray it, but you just have to have a plan in place that you're making sure you're digging it out, you're getting all the rhizomes, and you have a plan to plant pretty quickly after that, so that things can get established. So I think
it was a great question.
That was a great question. I'd love more of those.
The one thing I just want to wish him luck with that, because it's a lot of hard work. Just knowing a lot of the companies and people that we've worked with that are doing those kind of restorations, usually on a lot larger scale, but it's something that takes years and patience, and it's hard.
You may have to go through, even if you dig it out, you just have to keep going back and checking, because if you miss something, it's going to start coming back
And if
up.
you have any Phragmites around that area, there's always a threat for it to come back
blow
in.
back in.
So.
Yeah. So do you want to do a pod deck?
Yeah, let's do it.
You know what? I forgot to bring it into the office. So can you fill space for 30 seconds while I go get the deck?
All right.
Hold on.
I was going to say, this is the sound of a seed packet shaking. But one of the things that Fran and I have been talking about that we're actually going to do on the next buzz we're going to start, and this is also kind of inspired by our review today, was we're starting a series where we're going to take one buzz episode each to talk about forbs, one to talk about grasses, one to talk about trees, one to talk about shrubs, and some of our favorites, some of the uses for them, and why they're important to the ecosystem, and just really break down each subset into, like I said, why it's important.
Yeah, we don't, even though we discuss everything that we do revolves around native plants, we don't really discuss native plant specifics a lot. And this will give us a chance just to get a little bit more in depth. And that's what the buzz is here for. So
yeah, exactly.
I love that idea.
So look into, we're thinking it'll be the next buzz. So 2 weeks from now, that's our goal, but things may change. So it might be 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now.
Do we want to reveal who the next guest is? So we're kind of breaking the routine, and it's going to be another meet our guest for the next episode. Do you want to say who it is, or do you want to still tease it?
Let's tease it, because we still haven't confirmed the date that we're going to record. So all right. I don't want something to fall through.
So the topic will be foraging.
Yep. Yeah.
So our next meet the guest will be discussing foraging, and I know Tom had already put on the Facebook group questions. We have a lot of great questions to ask. Yep. And I know nothing about foraging. I'm going to be honest. I know very little.
I know very, very little. I know more than Fran, but not much more.
Yeah. So that will be good. Then we'll have another buzz. And then after that should be our next rooted discussion with the government's role in restorations. And I'm not going to reveal who the other guests are, but Emil DeVito, we already mentioned that he will be one of the guests.
Yeah.
So,
and it's some of our favorite people in this industry. That's one of the reasons we're so excited about it.
It should be a great discussion, and it's from all viewpoints and vantage points. So, all right, I have the pod decks. Oh, I guess it would be helpful if I didn't hit the microphone.
Yeah, there's your mic.
Let's see. Can I
knock?
Yeah, there you go. Boom, boom. All right, let's see here. What, interview your significant other? Like, what are the odds I keep pulling the same one at? Break your business. Discuss how you can put yourself out of business.
Oh, for us?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I know how to do that. So yeah, for Pinelands Nursery, and actually there's a really good example of the right way to do things that happened today that I saw on Facebook. But for Pinelands Nursery, for us, it's really just knowing what we're good at. And this, I shouldn't say for us, this is for everyone. Yeah. It's knowing what you're good at, sticking to what you're good at, having strong core values that you can rally every one of your employees around, and they all believe in them. When you have people who aren't the right fit, whether it's for the organization, but just their job, try and find the right fit for them first in your organization. And then if they don't match what your core values are, that's when it's time to fire them, because when you have a bad employee, it's just bringing the rest of your good employees down. Yeah. And you'll find by cutting the bad employee loose, it just releases the potential of all your good employees. But the big thing is just being true to what we believe in, and we want to be honest. We want to have integrity. We want to be knowledgeable. Those are the three things that Pinelands Nursery really, and having a family background. Yeah. Those are the things that we really pride ourselves on. Is maybe we can't answer your question on the phone, but we'll find an answer for you. We're going to try and help you through your project. And just having that integrity to not say we're going to be able to do something that we can't do.
I guess I'll take it from the sales standpoint, since I do sales. If we wanted to go out of business, I would just very quickly just start saying yes to everything, regardless if it's something we grow or if we've had experience growing it or it's a different size, or I would just say yes, but our business has been built on honesty and integrity throughout the years. And that's what they expect the right answer from us. I could easily, there's a lot of orders that we've said, we're not going to take that order because I don't think that plant's going to survive where you're putting it. That's not the right plant for that. You really may want to change what you're using. And it's not even something that we grow. This is the right plant for it. Contact this person. We had a scenario. It was a big project that we didn't get because they wanted a plant earlier than what you could really naturally produce. And we said, we can supply it 2 months after the fact, but we can't do it here. So they gave the order to someone that said they could do it, and they couldn't do it. And we ended up, they took the plants from that person, delivered them from us, and had us finish them in the time frame that we said it was doable. So, if you wanted to break the business, don't follow through on any of your promises. Just say yes to everything regardless, but that's not who we are. That's not what our business.
There's another phrase that it's under promise, over deliver.
Yeah. Don't
over promise and under deliver. Right. That's a good way to not have repeat customers. But the great example of this that I found today, and I forgot I was posting it into our Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group, and I got sidetracked and haven't posted it yet. But it was from North Creek Nurseries, who Steve Castrani from Aruda Discussions, he's the CEO at North Creek. Well, they put out a special bulletin today that they have stopped selling Carex flacca. Is that how you pronounce it, Frank?
I believe so, yeah.
Flacca, and all its cultivars, one of them being Blue Zinger, because it had come to their attention that it's a European species, and it was being found outside of cultivation in Connecticut, Vermont, Kentucky, Michigan, New York, and the Canadian provinces of Nova Scotia, Ontario, and Quebec. Basically, they found that it is potentially invasive. So they decided to stop selling it because they don't want to propagate an invasive plant, even though it's a big seller for them, and that it's being spec'd by all kinds of landscape architects for job sites or gardens. Yeah. So they're being true to their mission, which is to grow plants that are not going to hurt the environment, and more so to help the environment, and not selling and not growing something that found that they're going to lose money right immediately because of that decision.
Yeah.
But in the long run, they're holding true to their values, and people are going to respect them more because of it.
Exactly.
So,
and
they'll make more money by not selling it, even though they're losing that cash up front.
There has to be a balance. If you were to completely just treat a native plant nursery as a business, you wouldn't be as successful. If you treated a native plant nursery solely as something you loved, you wouldn't be successful. There has to be a good marriage. You have to be a good business person and do the right thing and do it because it's something that you love. And I think all the people that we've talked about or have had on that are successful for those reasons. They've been able to navigate both of that together. So if we wanted to break our business, we could just go one way or the other. And that would
you saw in 2008 there's a lot of nurseries that went out of business, and it's because they didn't pay attention to the business side of things. And there's a lot of nurseries that go out of business because their ownership eventually gets a reputation of being just money loving. And that's all they care about, and they lose all their integrity because they're just known as being someone who's in the money. So I guess it kind of boils down to don't just chase
a quick buck.
You can't just chase a quick buck. You got to work hard and be consistent, have integrity, and eventually you'll become prosperous because of it.
I mean, we've been successful as we are because of how we handled it. But you have to keep reevaluating and changing. Like we could easily just grow just the plants that we love and just that, and that doesn't mean anyone wants them or so you have to have a good balance, and you have to have the right people that all are on board with that mission.
Exactly.
So
so I guess I didn't give a blueprint for how someone could come in and break our business. I don't know how you could do that, because if you're doing those things, it would be incredibly hard to break a business. If you're like integrity is the big one.
Just do the opposite of what we said we're doing, and that would break it. So, all right. I think that's it. I think that was a good episode. And we kept it. I think we're only about an hour.
Perfect. Because I got a meeting.
You have a meeting in 5 minutes. So
we're going to have to wrap up anyway.
Let's wrap it up.
So that is it. Thank you again for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed listening to this buzz edition of Native Plants Healthy Planet, presented by Pinelands Nursery.
I want to give a huge thank you to RJ Comer for our Buzz theme music, and we're gonna premiere RJ's music that he lent us for the next Rooted discussion. So we're happy about that. Make sure you stream or buy RJ's music on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you consume or buy your music. Follow us on Twitter at Pineland Nursery, no S there. Facebook at Pinelands Nursery NJ, Instagram at Pinelands Nursery, and you can search Pinelands Nursery on YouTube. We're only a few subscribers away from the custom domain.
Yeah.
So please, if you're watching our videos and you're enjoying the clips of all these segments of the podcast, please make sure you hit subscribe. I think we need like 13 more.
Yeah. We're getting really close.
And that would do it. Don't forget about the question and comment line. Thank you, Matt, for calling in. If anyone else would like to call in, you can reach us at 215-346-6189. I will repeat that one more time in case you're writing it down. Proper etiquette, 215-346-6189. Ask a question, leave a comment. If we pick your question or comment, we'll play it and answer it on a future episode of The Buzz. And we have a ton of great new members on the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group. So keep growing that community. We want to see it keep going.
Yep. You can listen to Native Plants Healthy Planet directly at www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. But you can also check us out on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you consume your podcasts. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review while you're there. Like we started out this episode, we saw a review that didn't quite sit right with us, and we wanted to address it and try and help that person.
Yeah,
I hope they listen, because I think this helps them for some of the things they were looking for.
I think that the person may be starting from the very beginning and haven't really seen the evolution of the podcast and where we're at. But I'm hoping if they stay on the journey and they get to this episode, they can see that, we are trying to accommodate it all.
Yeah. And please refer a friend to our podcast.
Yeah.
Like, we want to spread this message. We need more native plants in the world. This is how we're approaching it. We want to get this message out there and get more people on this native plant train, because it's what the earth needs.
Yeah, so, we need more people.
So
more people.
Last thing, as always, you can ask Alexa to play Native Plants Healthy Planet by saying, Alexa, play the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. I'm Tom.
And I am Fran. Thank you again, everyone. We appreciate you tuning in every week. We'll see you again next time. Until then, keep it native.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.